Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Intentional Impact. Today, I'm very happy to have my guest. It is Zach Ruebesam. He is a University of Colorado assistant coach slash director of player development. Zach, I'm excited to have you on.
Skylar, what's up, man? Thank you for the opportunity to join you, man. And, thank you for what you're doing with this series. I watched your first episode, and I think there's a lot to be said about a young guy breaking into coaching and, still looking to provide value to other coaches. And, we're lifelong learners. So I watched a lot of different things, and, I watched your episode last week, and it was really good. So appreciate the opportunity to get on with you.
Yeah, no, man, I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to start off with you giving us a little bit of an intro, kind of give us a background on how you got into coaching and how you got to where you're at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Colorado guy. I grew up in Berthoud, Colorado, which is a small town about, 35 minutes north of Boulder. Played everything growing up, small high school. We had like 600 kids. So did a little bit of everything. But, it was probably my junior year of high school. I kind of had the self-awareness and realization, like, pretty good basketball player. You're not going to go to the NBA. Could play at Division II, Division III, maybe NAIA school. But really what I wanted to do was coach. And it was there through, a family friend in town that had connections. I was a former college coach, knew Tad Boyle. I would always wanted to go to Colorado. It was the only big school I was going to apply to. He got me connected with Coach Boyle, and it turned into being a student manager for 4 years while I was in college. And, looking back now that I'm 30 years old, going to Colorado and being a student manager was the best decision I've ever made, in my career life because of the relationships it built at a young age. We have a unique staff here at Colorado. Coach Boyle is in his 15th year. Our associate head coach is in his 15th year. Mike Rohn, Bill Carton, our director of operations, is in his 15th year. So they've been here the whole time. So to build a relationship with those guys when you're 18 and kind of flourish throughout your career has been pretty cool to come full circle. But I was really lucky, was a student manager for 4 years for coach. And then timing is everything in life, and timing is everything in coaching. And it worked out that when I was graduating, Rodney Billups, who was an assistant on staff, got the job at the University of Denver. And I was fortunate enough that Coach Billups brought me along with him and gave me my first job in coaching as a graduate assistant at DU. He promoted me to director of ops after I got my master's degree done. And it was a great run at Denver. And then again, got really fortunate with timing. One of my best friends in the world, a guy that was in my wedding this last year, someone I hold really dear, Dan Fickey, who was an assistant at DU, got the job at Belmont Abbey College out in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. So 2 Colorado guys kind of picked up and moved to North Carolina. I didn't really know anything about North Carolina. I hadn't lived outside of Colorado. I was very lucky in that sense, but spent 2 years with Dan at Belmont Abbey. And then again, we had an opening at Colorado, and Coach Boyle hired me back 4 years ago now, going into my 4th season as director of player development. And I've been fortunate as college basketball landscape changes and, rules change. I've been promoted here at Colorado to a full-time assistant coach. And I'm, over the moon coming to work every day at my alma mater. It's what I've dreamed about since I was 17 years old. So to be able to do that as our young coach on staff here at Colorado, it's been awesome.
No, yeah, that's big time. And a little question that I have for you that I didn't plan on asking, but because you were a former manager, I think it's important. I was also a former manager, and I'm someone who highly advocates for managers. What was something when you were at Colorado as a manager that you did that still holds value to you this day?
Yeah.
So let me reword that a bit. Like, what did you do as a manager that you still use in your coaching or that helped you be the coach that you are today?
Yeah, I would say 2 things. First, one of the best pieces of advice I got when I was a manager is like, I'm a big notes guy. Like I try to take notes on everything. One of the best pieces of advice was when I was a student manager, I would bring down a note card and have it in my pocket and have a pen or a pencil, whatever, in your pocket with you. And anything that was taught that I liked, or if coach said something I really liked or anything, I just wrote it down, right? Wrote it down on my note card every single day. And then after practice, I would, recopy it to a clean note card. But it's really cool looking back at that now because I still have that binder full of note cards from my 4 years at Colorado here in my office. So it's cool to look back and see some of the things that I liked then and see how it translates now. But I think the biggest thing that, I took from being a manager was it's basketball 101, right? Like it's the best to prepare yourself to be a coach if you're not playing at an extremely high level in the Big 12, right? You can be in all of the recruiting sessions. You can be in all of the scouting reports. You can do, recruiting mails with coaches. You can get, experience in every different part of being a college basketball coach when you're still in college. And I was fortunate because our staff allowed me to do all of these different things. So it was really like dive in and it became basketball 101 of how college basketball operates and how we do things at Colorado. And it's formed all of my coaching decisions and how I think about coaching and, hopefully how I'm going to run a program in the future.
I think that's big time, like having a staff that is willing to invest in you and in your development, because there's some places where a manager might be like an afterthought or someone who's just supposed to do something because this is what they're planning to do. But I think staffs that can
Yeah.
really take managers that have goals and ambitions to elevate themselves in this business, they can really take advantage of a staff that's willing to support them. So that's really cool that you were able to
Yeah.
have a staff that supported you that way. So as I
Yeah.
said, you're the director of player development at Colorado. So what are some of your key priorities in player development, and how do you assess each athlete's growth throughout the season?
Yeah, I think throughout the season's hard because I think there's two different switch that you really flip, right? Like when we go, it's when it's season time, right? Like it becomes less about the individual and more about the team. What can I do to help the team win? And that's a key distinction here for us at Colorado is we do all summer, we do a lot of player development stuff, we do skill work even still during the season. But the mindset kind of shifts. Like we're not trying to add anything to our game during the season. We're trying to figure out what skills do we have that maximizes our potential to help the team and achieve our ultimate goals of winning, X game and achieving success, right? So I think it flips a little bit during the season. During the season, it's all about, taking your vitamins. It's getting shots that you're going to get during the game. It's keeping your handle tight. It's doing all of these little things. Sure, all of these skills that we've built throughout the off season are sharp to let you contribute at, the optimal level to help our team win. Now, in the off season, like right after the season, we're doing off season development plans for each of our guys. What in the last year are your deficiencies? What are your strengths? How are we going to make our strengths stronger, continue to have them strengths, and how are we going to get our deficiencies a little bit better, right? If you are a 20% 3-point shooter, we're probably not going to turn you into a 40% 3-point shooter overnight. But what can we do rep wise, tweaking your shots, getting, fundamentals down correct to get you from 20% to 28%, right? That's achievable. So some of those small goals, and then it always comes back to dribbling, passing, and shooting. Like basketball is a simple game. Can we develop the skills necessary in those three areas for you to be proficient to help our team next season?
No, that's really good. And where do you think recruits have trouble when it comes to even playing not just the Division 1 level, you've also been at the Division 2 level. Where do you see those dribbling, passing, and shooting? Why do you think guys are so deficient at some of those things coming to the college level?
Yeah. I think one of the things that always sticks out to me is, as a general nutshell, this is not true about every incoming high school kid in the country. Like young dudes sometimes don't know how to work. Like they think, and even some of our college guys, right? Like our young college guys, they don't know how to work yet. They go in the gym and they really don't get a lot done. They might spend a lot of time in there, but they don't really get a lot done. So, I'm on efficiency. Like I don't care if you're coming in and getting thousands of shots up every day. That there's a place for that. I would love if you come in and get 200 full, game speed reps in of shots you're going to get during the game, right? So really trying to teach our young dudes how to work and how to be efficient and how to get out the fluff. I hate the fluff that comes into the training world of basketball. And again, it's a nutshell. It's not all trainers. It's not everybody, but the fluff that you see on social media, like basketball is not about that. Like we've been doing basketball for 100 years of, getting in the gym, one ball, a rebounder, getting better. You don't need cones and everything that you need there. So, but just teaching our guys how to work is the biggest thing you see with the young guys, I think.
No, and that actually leads perfectly into my next question is how do you ensure that every training session you have with a player or when a player is working out by themselves is purposeful? Like it has an intentionality to getting better at a certain thing.
Yeah. One thing, I think it's just kind of my personality is I can't go into a workout without a plan, right? Like I can make stuff up off the top of my head, but one of my fears is like if you do that so often, it looks like you're not prepared. And that's the last thing I want to do for our guys is if I'm gonna, a guy's gonna spend his time with me in the gym, he knows I'm gonna be prepared. I'm gonna have a plan. It's gonna be intentional about what we're gonna do to get better. It's not just gonna be, all right, let's go in the gym. Hey, let's kind of work on this today, maybe some of this, maybe some of that. I'm going to sit down. It has to be 5 or 10 minutes just sitting down. All right, what does Skylar need today? What can we do in this 30 or 45 minutes that we have that can make an impact and make him better? So I think that's a big thing is, especially as a young coach, just being prepared and doing your homework, I guess, in a sense, because I think that's the first thing guys see through if you're not prepared. Like if you go, and we're talking practice now, if you go into practice and you're not well versed in a drill and you're, messing up details of a drill and, are shaky on it, guys see that right away. So especially as a young coach, that's something that's really important to me is making sure no matter what it is, when the workout or if I'm running a drill in practice, I have that down and I have a plan going into it.
No, yeah, that's big time. And I feel like that's something really important, especially with a lot of athletes now. It's easier to come into certain levels being the guy at the places you were at before. And some guys don't have to work as hard because of their skill level at an earlier age or things like that. And then when it comes to a place where there's a bunch of other people that are just as talented as them or better, they start to struggle. And I feel like an important thing is having that like accountability when you're doing workout sessions. But
Yeah. And I think one thing too that just to that, Skylar, I think it's kind of it's not right, wrong, or different. It's just kind of the world that we're in today. Like a lot of our players, and I don't know about you guys, I'm sure that's very similar. Like they're very into why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? So I think that also goes back to preparation is like, I want, I know it, but I want to make sure I'm well communicative in telling our guys, this is why we're working on this action. We're working on this read because we're going to see this. So just making sure I'm prepared is a big thing.
no, yeah, for sure. That's big time. Another question I have for you is how do you guys at CU or anywhere you've been, how do you promote discipline and accountability within your program? And a slight question added to that, I see a lot of guys who have the mindset, especially now with how the transfer portal is, and it's so easy to be a 2, 3 time transfer. How do
Yeah.
you get guys to get out of the mindset of kind of playing the victim role as like, oh, like this school's done me dirty, this coach did me wrong, and kind of take accountability for maybe they're the problem or maybe there's something that they need to figure out. Like, how do you assess those type of situations?
Yeah. Great question. I think for all of us young coaches, culture is everything in our program. And Coach Boyle has done an unbelievable job of creating his culture here over 15 years. 15 years is a long, long time to be at one place. He's all-time winningest coach here, and he has created and executed a culture where guys know what's expected. And the best thing, kind of, you talked about accountability, guys hold each other accountable, and it varies year to year based on who's in the locker room. But overall, the Colorado basketball culture, you can ask a guy that, Josh Scott, that was here in school when I was here. You can ask Evan Batty, a young guy on our staff now. Like, if you ask them what's the culture of Colorado basketball, they'll tell you it's honesty, our work ethic, okay, and then trust, and then it's holding each other accountable. So I think Coach Boyle has done an unbelievable job with that of creating accountability and culture within where guys are policing themselves. But as with anything, there's going to be times where us as coaches have to police and have to hold each other accountable. But I think the way we do that is by how hard we coach them. But we can only coach them hard because there's personal relationships there. And that's another thing that I think coach has done a great job of here at Colorado is a lot of programs say family. And again, I'm biased. I've been at CU for 8 years from being a manager and assistant coach now, but when we say family here, we mean it. Like, it is a tight knit program. There are the biggest factor with that is we have 50 alums that come back every single year for a football game, and they want to get back on campus to fill that family aspect. So the family aspect is huge for us here, and I think that allows us to coach our guys hard, but having that culture installed helps them hold each other accountable to where if you're a senior here, and again, to get to your question with the transfer portal here in a minute, I don't know how many of those we'll have going through college basketball as a whole, where it's a 4-year guy, but a 4-year guy can relate to a freshman now because the freshman is going through the same stuff this senior was going through 4 years ago. Because Coach Boyle doesn't change, right? Like, this senior can go to this freshman and be like, hey man, stick in there. Like, I was in your shoes a couple years ago. Like, it's gonna get better. Keep your head down. Keep working. So I think that culture buy-in creates accountability, creates trust, creates all of that stuff. The transfer portal question is a great question. It's one, I think us as coaches have to accept it's the new reality. It's not going away. It's not going back to how it was. It's making sure really transfer recruiting to me is like speed dating. It's how can we get to know Skylar, get to know this recruit on to make sure they're appropriate fit in our program and our culture, that we're always trying to protect this culture. It comes down to getting the right guys. And, when we bring transfers or bring high school kids, bring anybody, JUCO kids on a visit, we ask our guys, like, hey, what's your feel on Skylar? Like, do you like him? Do you think he'll fit in with our program? Do you want to play with him? And if our guys are saying, no, coach, like, we don't think he fits Colorado basketball, he doesn't fit what we're about, we'll stop recruiting. So I think that's that give and take between coaches and players to make them a part of the recruiting process as well, because it's their program ultimately. Like, Coach Boyle has done a great job as a steward, but it's the program of Colorado basketball players. I think it's a big deal.
No, yeah, I think that's really important that you guys involve the players in those type of decisions, because I also feel like it gives like a sense of like trust to your players because they feel like they're actually valued with their opinion and you care about what the team will look like as a whole. So I think that's definitely important. And
I think there's some that has to go along with that too, though, because some guys you could be recruiting. Let's say you're a point guard, right? And we're bringing in a point guard or a transfer point guard. Are you threatened by that, or are you mature enough to see the bigger picture and how this recruit can help our program and maybe help you as well, taking something off your plate? Or are you threatened by it? Like, no, I don't want the competition. Like, that's the catch-22 that you have to navigate. And, that's where it's important to have the right guys in your program that see the bigger picture and see, like, coaches wouldn't be bringing someone in if it's not going to help us as a group.
No, that's actually great that you said that, because I have a follow-up question to that. How do you help, especially underclassmen like freshmen or sophomores who maybe aren't as mature or don't have the experience of dealing with those type of situations? How do you help them outside of just them gaining the experience? Because a senior definitely could see that mindset. I'm trying to win. They're bringing in a guy who's going to help us win. But like you said, a freshman coming in, they see it as it's a guy taking their spot, and that could really hurt the team.
Yeah, I think, well, one, I think that's human nature a little bit, right? Like, at the end of the day, we preach, and, I'm sure in your life and my life, like, we want to care about other people, but at the end of the day, everyone's a little bit selfish, right? Like, we're going to care about us first, right? Because we have to take care of ourselves, all of that stuff. But I think it's talking to them on a mature level and explaining things of, like, one, you're here at Colorado for a reason as well, right? Like, we're not going to recruit you to be a Colorado basketball player if you can't play at this level, right? Like, you're here for a reason. So have some confidence in that. And then two, coach preaches, and I know a little bit cliche, but it's true. Like, iron sharpens iron. Like, bringing in this dude to compete with and make you better is only going to, help the overall and make you better. So I think it's a hard conversation, and it's something that definitely happens, and it's going to happen for the history of coaching, the history of athletics, where it's something you can't get past, but it's something that, like, if the individual can see it as a positive and not see it as a negative, I think that starts and can really help them grow. Now, there's going to be situations and there's going to be different individuals where it's like, no, that's only a negative and you won't be able to change their mind no matter what you say. And sometimes you can't win them all, right? Like, sometimes it just is what it is. You're not gonna be able to change everybody's mind, but it's just going in with the fact of, we're not doing this to hurt you. We're doing this to help everybody.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think that's something, like I said, sometimes I think it could be tailored to a freshman because they're young and they're coming out and they take it as something that isn't what it actually is. Like you said, iron sharpens iron. We also use that at ORU. And I think that's something that, especially as you go through your college career, they start to realize it more later. But it's better late than never.
Yeah.
As long as they end up getting that point, that's the quicker way to win.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you look at it from a freshman perspective, like, and this is, I would say, for 95% of all freshmen, probably 100%. Like, freshmen are going to be, everyone's insecure, but freshmen are going to be insecure coming to college, whether it's playing at, Belmont Abbey College, playing at ORU, playing at University of Colorado. Like, there's going to be some insecurities there because, 7, 8 times out of 10, the high school kid coming to college was the best player on his team, right? Like, was the big fish in a small pond to an extent. And now he's coming in to being a freshman. There's going to be insecurities there. There's going to be doubts. There's going to be the ups and downs that all freshmen have. But it's really sticking through that, believing in your work, believing in all the reasons you came here in the first place, to stick through the hard times, especially young in your career.
For sure. And how do you approach communication with your players, not only when things are going good and just normal day-to-day things, but also when maybe a player's going through a tough time, whether that's maybe it's a shooting slump or they're not getting the minutes that they think they should be getting? How do you approach communication with those players?
Yeah, our staff is unique, right? Coach Boyle has been here for 15 years, older guy in his 60s. We have 3 former head coaches on staff. Coach Roan, associate head coach, who's been here for 15 years. Bill Greer, who's been the head coach at San Diego, and then Danny Manning, who's been the head coach at Wake Forest and Tulsa, right? So I'm the young guy on our staff by like 15 years, right? So the big thing I try to do communication wise is, one, there has to be trust there on and off the court. So checking in on our guys, just not about basketball, and building that personal relationship as a younger guy, I think is important for our group. Because if there's a relationship there about basketball, but about school, about personal life, all of that stuff, I think it opens up to have conversations when stuff isn't going well. Because I think if you only try to have those conversations when it's going bad, I don't think it's received great all the time. Rather than if you're checking on me all the time, good, bad, or indifferent, like, and it doesn't have to be long 30-minute conversations, just a 2-minute conversation before practice every single day, just touching everybody. I think that builds trust and it makes the hard conversations easier. So I think that's a big thing, is just the personal relationship away from basketball and building that so that it'll allow you to coach them through the hard times. The trust, it just goes back to trust with everything.
No, yeah, for sure. And I also feel like it's important when players feel like you care about them, they're more willing to accept that feedback. But like you said, if you just talk
Yeah.
to a player when they're doing something wrong, or you're only checking on them when you're never checking on them, but then you randomly do it, you
Yeah.
almost feel as if it's not genuine. And I think being genuine,
Yeah.
especially in this coaching business, whether it's to other coaches or players, like, is one of my most important things. Is I want to be genuine with anybody I come into contact with. I don't want to ever come off as either somebody I'm not or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
So that you have that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also goes back to, like, we have, as coaches, have to be vulnerable enough and have to be able to admit when we screw up and we're make a mistake. Like, we have to treat our players as human beings. Like, hey, whatever it is, on the court, off the court, like, hey, I screwed that up. I'm sorry. Like, I know this hurts our relationship for a sense. I'm like, but owning up to anything that you make a mistake on and apologizing as a human being to them, I think grows your relationship. I think that's an important aspect. It's not just, hey, Skylar, you need to do this. You need to do this. You're struggling with this. Like, if you make a mistake, like, hey, man, I screwed that up. I'm not perfect either. Like, I'm going through this with you. I made a mistake. So I think that's an important aspect as well.
No, 100%. Another question I have for you is, in what ways do you intentionally create opportunities for your players to take ownership of not just their contribution to the team, but also their
Yeah.
development, especially as the season goes on?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I don't know if I have a great answer for it, but I think the best way that we try to do it here is, and this is not going to be come off correctly, but a lot of players today, in some way or some form, have been coddled or babied. Like everyone does everything for some of these guys, right? Whether in the every level, right? So one thing we try to do is like, we're going to help you, but we're not going to do things for you. You guys are all 17, 18 years old. You're an adult. Like, time for you guys to, take accountability for your class schedule, for your meetings, for your this. Like, you're going to tell me how good you want to be as a basketball player. I'm not going to tell you. Like, if you don't want to come in and watch film, if you don't want to come in and get extra work, if you don't want to come in and do these things, you say you want to be a pro, but if you're not coming in and doing those things, you're telling me enough already. Right. So if I have player A that's doing all of these different things, coming in and get extra shots, coming in and getting film, we put in a set, coming in and drop the set, doing this. Player A is doing all this, and player B's saying he wants to be good, but the work isn't matching up with that. It starts with a conversation with player B, and then it's going to be like, hey, man, you're in charge of your own career to an extent. Like, I can't, hand it to you. You have to go take some of it. So I think there's that part of it. And then it also goes back to our culture. Like, we have a culture of work. We have a culture of expectation that you're coming back in to get extra shots. You're coming in to watch film. I think it's not an easy thing to create, especially I'm trying to figure out if I ever have the opportunity to be a head coach, how I'm going to create that in year one and year two, because I'm seeing it in year, 11 through 15. And then when I was a student manager, 6, 7 years before that, and how it's evolved. But creating that culture of work, I think, is important. But the guys have to go take it for themselves to an extent. Like, we cannot force them to be a pro or force them to be a high-level college basketball player. We can help them. We can do anything for them to assist them with that. But at the end of the day, it goes back on them.
No, for sure. And how do you prepare those guys for life after college basketball? Because I think that transition is something that at every level, a lot of players struggle with. I know I was at a Division 3 where there were
Yeah.
athletes that either reclassed or they took a few years off and then came back, and they're going to be playing basketball until they're 25. And that's all they've been
Yeah.
doing. Some of those guys never had a job. Some of those guys never had to really live life yet. So when basketball ends, it almost comes to a point where like you feel like a piece of you is missing. How do you prepare guys
Sure.
for that transition?
Yeah. That it's very, very, very important. Um, and it's one thing that our athletic department and us as a program do very well. We always do a summer program where we bring in, former players that are financial advisors, that are in marketing, that are whatever walk of life, former players around our program that are doing something other than basketball. We bring them in and have them sit down with our guys and provide value for them going forward. And maybe something like we're talking, college basketball is different now with name, image, and likeness and everything that goes into that. Like, guys, this is how you do your taxes. You have to do taxes every single year for the rest of your life. Like, this is how you do it, right? So kind of those workshops, fun stuff of like, who knows here how to change a tire, right? Like, we've changed tires before in the summer. Like, all of those different things to help them with skills that they, may not have been taught. We try to implement in our program. And then I think it just goes a step further of the personal relationships. I think one great thing that Coach Boyle does is we have academic coaches here. So we have our, team academic advisor that spends time with our guys every week, but he takes it a step further to where our roster is divided up amongst the 4 or 5 assistant coaches, right? So I may have 2 to 3 academic guys, and we are supposed to meet with them once a week. And it's to talk about academics. And it's really, I try to use it as to talk about anything and other than basketball, right? We'll talk about school. We'll talk about your personal life. We'll talk about what's going on. And I have, a couple scholarship guys and a couple walk-ons. And let's use the walk-ons as an example, right? Like, they're paying their way through school. They have a little bit different goal in mind than potentially some of these guys that are, going on a full ride here. So it's like, hey, what's your next plan? Have you started internships? Have you looked at applying for jobs? Like really trying to break it down on a personal level to those guys is what we try to do individually as assistants, and then bring it in the whole the summer program and any resources we have for them.
No, that's really good. And I love how you guys even incorporate your walk-ons in that process because it does look different for them because
Yeah.
you're not on a full ride. They maybe know, all right, maybe I'm not going to play pro basketball after this. But because you guys still have a plan, it also shows those guys that you care about them, and that also leads to them working hard. So I love how you guys still incorporate your walk-ons that way.
Yeah, I have so much respect for walk-ons. I don't know what's going to happen with walk-ons going forward with the roster limits, and I don't know what it all looks like at the NCAA level, but walk-ons have been so important to the culture of Colorado basketball because they sacrifice so much and don't get a ton in return. They get to be a part of our program, get to be a part of our team, but they're not playing 20 minutes a night. They're paying their way through school. So like the selflessness that those kids have all the way back to, when I was in college and the walk-ons we have, like, is second to none. And they're integral part of our program and how we do things. So they're so important.
No, yeah, that's big time. I love that. My last question for you, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. My last question for you is, what are two concrete pieces of advice you could give young coaches who are trying to make their way into becoming, whether it's the Division 1 level or just break a barrier into the college life?
Yeah. Um, the first thing I'd say is, and this is kind of just an overarching, caution piece of example, like it's hard to bring in, right? Like if you're not ready to sacrifice definitely financially your time, partly some of your relationships to get in and do this, like you should probably go do something else. But if you want to coach, right? So be prepared to go anywhere. I think that's the one thing, big piece of advice is like coaching basketball is coaching basketball. It doesn't matter if you're a high school coach, it doesn't matter if you're a Division 1 head coach, it doesn't matter if you're at Kentucky, at Colorado, like coaching basketball is coaching basketball. So go where you are making an impact, because that's what it always comes back to is find where you're making an impact on the kids we're coaching. Because if it's not about the kids we're coaching, then we're doing it for the wrong reasons. It can't be about us, right? For young coaches trying to break in, the biggest thing I would say is, and you said it earlier, and have a great amount of respect for you for that, is be genuine, right? Build genuine relationships. It can't be relationships that are, what can that person do for me? Because at times, like, if I'm a young coach trying to break in, I might not be able to do anything for you at this moment. But if I'm genuine and we build a relationship and there's care and trust involved in that, like I don't know where you're going to be in 5 years. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. But if there's genuine relationships that help each other, those relationships are what are going to help you navigate this thing. And, some of my best friends, I met Chris Huey is an assistant at Loyola Chicago. I met Chris Huey when I was a student manager my junior year, going to work the camp at KU in the summertime. He picked me up from the airport, and we've been friends ever since. And it's kind of those sort of relationships, just being genuine with people and seeing where you guys both grow to, providing that support system. So that's kind of the roundabout first thing I say is be genuine, build genuine relationships. The second thing I would say, again, kind of touching on it, is be ready to go to any opportunity, right? To get your foot in the door, it's going to be really hard to get a graduate assistant spot at Oral Roberts, right? Graduate assistant spots are, I think, some of the hardest positions to get because everybody wants them, right? So you may have to go be a JUCO assistant. You may start as a high school assistant. It doesn't matter. Coaching basketball is coaching basketball, and every step you take is going to prepare you for the next door that opens. You may not know what that next door is, but you can't shut down opportunities if you want to coach because you think it's quote unquote beneath you, or I don't want to do that, or the money's not enough. Well, don't tell me you really want to coach college basketball if you're turning down an opportunity to coach college basketball. You'll figure out ways to make it work, make it happen if this is what you want to do. And if you don't, that's okay too. But like it's a hard thing to get into, and don't take it for granted when you have an opportunity because thousands of other people want that opportunity.
No, 100%. And that's one of my key things I feel, especially as I was getting into coaching was realizing that I started off as a high school JV coach with girls, and then
Yep.
went to JUCO, and then I went to a D3. And going from D3 to D1, it's not something that always happens, but I was able to be a genuine person and do those type of things that helped to lead me to a position at a place like ORU. So I definitely think those two things that you said are very important to anybody's development and wanting to get into the college basketball world.
And I'm sure you're taking something from every single place you've been that helps you still right now in your current job. Because again, I believe at the end of the day, coaching basketball is coaching basketball. We're all dealing, excuse me, with the same sort of problems to an extent that I'm dealing with here, that you're dealing with at ORU, that a high school coach at my old high school is dealing with. Like, we're all dealing with the same sort of thing. So navigating that, no matter where you're at, is only going to help you when you get your opportunity to be at an ORU, to be at a Colorado, to be at a Belmont Abbey. It doesn't matter where you're at.
No, 100%. And yeah, no, I couldn't have said it better myself, Zach. Zach, I appreciate
Nah.
you coming on today. Another episode of Intentional Impact. I'm going to put Zach's Twitter in the bio so you guys can all tap into Zach. Great guy, genuine guy. I'm excited to keep our relationship going as time goes. And good luck to Colorado the rest of the season.
Good luck to you guys too, man. Appreciate you having me on, Skyler.
Yep.